Alright, we're about to make the case for the GH6 being the best value micro four thirds camera in June of 2024. Let's get into it. Welcome back, folks. My name's Shane. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Panasonic LUMIX GH6. At the time of filming this video, at least here in Australia, this is 54% off because the GH7 has been announced that it's coming out in July of 2024. So this camera now is maybe the best value micro four thirds camera on the market. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to put this video together is because the GH6 is very similar to the GH7 in a lot of ways, but we're going to talk about how it is different. And if you're thinking about buying one of these, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you need to know. So the GH6, when it came out, everyone was hoping for phase detection autofocus, but it wasn't meant to be. The first micro four thirds camera that got phase detection autofocus is, of course, the LUMIX G9II, which I purchased one of these, and this has been such a great camera. It's smaller and lighter than the GH6, but it's also far more expensive. So you got to talk about price to performance ratio, and that's what this video is about. This is about price to performance ratio. So as of right now in Australia, this is just under 1,700 Australian dollars, and due to its performance, 4K at 120 frames per second, 5.7K, open gate at 5.8K, ProRes internal recording, and all of those kind of features, it makes this an absolute powerhouse of a video camera. But more than that, it's also an excellent photographic camera. Sure, the size might not be for everybody, but this is a premium body design with active cooling, a flip out and turnaround screen like this, which I absolutely love using, and it's just a super reliable camera. And if you can live without phase detection autofocus, this is still a really viable camera even in 2024. Now, one of the reasons this is as inexpensive as it is right now is obviously because it's being discontinued. Panasonic said in their announcement video of the GH7 that it's replacing the GH6. So this is getting blown out at 54% off in Australia. And I'm really tempted to get another one at that price because it represents excellent value for money. You get the same great body design as the GH7, exactly the same menu with the exception of the things that this camera doesn't have. It's super reliable, you can't overheat it, you can shoot 4K at 120 frames per second all day, and it's just going to continue to run. This is a really robust camera, and if you're already someone who's shooting with manual focus lenses, maybe you've got a couple of cine lenses or third-party manual focus lenses, and you're happy shooting like that, this is excellent. The skin tones and color science out of the GH6 are still some of my favorites. It still looks that little bit different to the GH7 and G9II. The GH7 and G9II share a very similar color science. This is just that little bit different. It sort of has a more saturated mid-tone, which is very flattering on the skin. Now let's talk about some of the standout features that are missing from the GH6 that you find on the G9II or of course the GH7. One of which that I hoped was going to come to this camera, which hasn't sadly, is the E-stabilization or electronic stabilization. This allows you to basically get a small crop and get almost gimbal-like results when shooting handheld. There's also a high mode which crops in a little bit more, and you can run with that and it looks amazing. This doesn't have that, but it has arguably one of the best standard IBIS systems. One of the strengths of micro four thirds, even going back to the G85 days, is how great the in-body image stabilization is. You can vlog with these, you can use them for handheld video. You get an IS boost mode, which allows you to basically get a tripod looking shot when shooting handheld. And if you're not planning on getting the latest and greatest in-body image stabilization from the GH7 or even the G9II, this is still way better than most cameras. It kills my Sony camera that I'm shooting with in this particular scenario, so for handheld work, this is still a really great choice. I think it's also worth mentioning that the E-stabilization, as great as it is for sort of social content and posting stuff on YouTube, it gives you a very different look. This has more of an organic look to it. You get more of an in-the-moment handheld look as opposed to this sort of almost GoPro levels of stabilization. So this will feel a lot more fluid, especially if you're a filmmaker. Odds are even if you get a GH7, you might not want that particular feature on if you're shooting short films. So just keep that in mind. The second biggest consideration, at least in my experience using the GH7 and this, is that this isn't compatible with 32-bit float audio that the new GH7 is capable of recording. But that said, it's now compatible with the DMW XLR2 and of course the original DMW XLR1, and that still gives you excellent audio quality. So if you're looking to get great quality audio, this will still give it to you, but you won't get the new 32-bit float recordings. Maybe the next consideration with the GH6 is that it doesn't give you proxy support. Now, while not everybody needs that, The GH7 allows you to do it, so that might be the better choice if you're in those type of shooting scenarios. But for social content or YouTube and all that kind of stuff, this is still a really great camera. And again, if you're doing any type of run and gun filmmaking, the GH6 will definitely get the job done. Another small disadvantage to the GH6 over the GH7, and then we're going to talk about a positive here, is the fact that this uses dynamic range boost. It's a feature you have to turn on to get the most amount of dynamic range, and if you're shooting in log, it kind of ramps your ISO all the way up to 2000, which isn't ideal. You can also shoot with this mode on in the standard picture profiles, and I think it boosts it to about 800, which is a little bit more manageable, but you do get more dynamic range having this feature on. But it's just one of those features. It doesn't work in every setting, and it can get a little confusing. Now on the GH7, they've just basically enabled this all the way through the ISO range, giving you better dynamic range at all settings. So the GH7 definitely has the win there just in terms of usability, but the image quality out of this camera is fantastic. And if you're coming from a GH5 or even a GH5 Mark II, this will be a much better camera visually. You know, I stopped kind of upgrading a lot of my Micro Four Thirds cameras because I went from like the G85 to the GH5 to the GH5S to the GH5 Mark II, and then I got a GH6, and there wasn't as big of a difference between the older models in terms of image quality up until the GH6 came out, and the GH5S to some extent as well. That had beautiful image quality, but this really looked much better in every way. The skin tones looked better, the overall image quality looked better, there was less noise, all that kind of stuff, and it was just a more premium image. So if you're coming from an older camera and you're looking to save a fortune on what was a flagship camera, now is the best time to buy this before you can't get it. As of shooting this video, I've been right on the fence whether or not I get a second one of these for my multi-camera setup anytime I'm doing a product tutorial. Micro Four Thirds works great when I want more in focus but keeping the ISO down. You get that f1.7 lens, it gives you the shallow depth of field look, as about an f3.4 full frame, but I can keep the ISO lower than I could on a fast prime lens for full frame and then stopping down. So you got to keep all of these things into consideration. But these are really great cameras for the studio. I can run them off a dummy battery or power them via USB PD. I love the fact we get a full-size HDMI on this camera as well, and you can just let it run all day with no overheating. These are some of the things that I think about when I'm looking at getting a really great studio tool. If you're looking for a great A and B camera for client work or YouTube in a situation like this, these cameras represent excellent value. There's not a whole lot on the market at this particular price as of right now that even rivals the GH6 in any meaningful way. These were, I think, slightly ahead of their time when it came to the resolutions and codecs and options, but behind their time when it came to autofocus. So if you can live with that limitation, I still think these are really great value. Let us know what you think of the Panasonic LUMIX GH6 and whether you've got one or you're thinking about getting one. Man, I tell you what, the price right now makes me want another one, but the smart part of my brain is saying, should I just wait until the GH7 gets discounted? So I'm sort of on the fence there, but this is 54% off, which makes it arguably the best value camera currently for Micro Four Thirds. Thanks for watching.